Happy Saturday conversation. I'm joined by Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart. Want to thank our sponsor, the Purdue Union Club Hotel, and the good folks down there that are operating the restaurant, the 811 restaurant, and obviously the Union Club Hotel open for business, and we appreciate them. Also want to remind folks, if you're interested in becoming a member of GoldandBlack.com, you can do so. We have a 40-day free trial available. Go to GoldandBlack.com. The job that Brian and the job Tom does make it worthwhile, I promise you. So it's a guarantee. It's at least a 40-day guarantee that it's worth it. So Brian, obviously I don't know how else to minimize the importance last night to the 55-54 victory. Trayvon Williams' job, you articulated that well in your video post game, et cetera. But this was it's hard to minimize how important this win was, and kind of came out of not many games when you score 16 points in the first half that you come back and win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the thing with Purdue, after Rutgers and Illinois, I just thought that was a team that just didn't know how to win yet, and that was something that they had to kind of grow into. And Purdue had its chances at, in those final few minutes against Michigan State. They got within one and missed four straight threes. You obviously had the possession there at the end where Eric Hunter turns it over. That was not good. That was a really disastrous possession. It looked like it was happening again. And, to Purdue's credit, though, in the final 12 seconds of the game, like literally everything that had to happen happened. It was like their Virginia game where this weird Rube Goldberg kind of unfolding of events had to occur for you to win that game, and it did. And to Purdue's credit, they did everything right there. But that being said, Michigan State really fell apart in that second half, and Purdue, it came down to those last 12 seconds. Purdue was never able to get that extra gear to pass Michigan State, while Michigan State at home had turned into Purdue on the road, where, those turnovers were just atrocious, and their offense just really struggled. Their guard play was very, very uneven. This is a very flawed Michigan State team, obviously. But to Purdue's credit, they were dead at halftime, dead in the water. 16 points in the first half is ridiculous. They just didn't do anything they needed to do in that first half to really be in a position to win this game. I thought Jaden Ivy gave them some life in the first half, and then Trayvon Williams just simply carried them in the second half. Just a real, proverbial tour de force, by Purdue's best player. And then those last 12 seconds just won the game for you, because everything you had to do, you did perfectly, from Brandon Newman denying the inbound, to Eric Hunter forcing the turnover, to Mason Gillis getting on the loose ball, to Zach Edey, making that possible, to Mason Gillis playing textbook defense on Aaron Henry's potential game winner there at the final second. Just perfect basketball by Purdue when it mattered the most. And that speaks to growth, because, when Purdue had opportunities to win at Rutgers and Illinois, they couldn't build on success. They couldn't maintain just doing positive things to put themselves in an even better position. And here is an example of them. This was the opposite of the Miami game, the exact opposite of the Miami game. And it just speaks to, Purdue's growth, perhaps, that, they were able to, pull off those last 12 seconds of the game.
Yeah, big win, Brian. Too bad they couldn't have got that Nebraska game in as well. We could be talking about 2 wins in a row, but no use dwelling on that. As you noted, third win in a row for Purdue against Michigan State. Like you said, a chance for growth. Trayvon Williams, look where he was at earlier this year. I know you said at one point early on, Painter was not happy with the junior class. Trayvon didn't get to start there for a while, and he certainly looks like he's answered the bell. And just sort of speak to his development. That was the ultimate one-man gang last night, and now Purdue carries some mojo into this coming Thursday's game down at Indiana. And again, it's just too bad Purdue has to wait that long to get back on the court.
Yeah, he played like your best player, one of the best players in the league yesterday. He played with a poise about him, a confidence about him. I think he had a really good matchup, because Michigan State doesn't have a typical Michigan State barrel-chested, bouncer-looking guy to throw at him. There's no Kenny Goins on this team. There's no Nick Ward on this team. But he was just really good, and he wanted the ball. And, Purdue's guards figured out a way after that first half was kind of a calamity of errors against Michigan State's perimeter defense. They found a way to get the ball inside to him. Trayvon Williams made a couple of really, really good catches on those inbounds too in the last couple in the last couple sequences, and that was obviously really important. By and large, he made his free throws. He just looked like an alpha, and that's the thing with Trayvon Williams is he's shown you flashes before, but he's never really been all that consistent, and he's played well in games, but I don't know if he's ever carried you to victory. And that's sometimes what you need from your best players, guys as talented as Trayvon Williams is. Every now and then there has to be a game or two a year where they just carry you to victory, and that's exactly what he did yesterday. Purdue dead in the water at halftime, 16 points at halftime. They're dead in the water. And then he, as Eric Hunter put it yesterday, he stepped up to the plate. He absolutely did in every sense of the term and really stuck it to Michigan State.
Michigan State scores the first basket of the second half, and you thought, oh my gosh, this thing, is Purdue going to even get to 40 points? Extremely impressive. And you've talked a little bit about Jaden Ivy. I thought some of your questions and comments about him and the importance not only of what he did in the first half when you scored 16 points, the fact he got 6 rebounds. I know that there's you look at him, he's averaging less than 4.9 points a game or whatever he's averaging. And he's had some challenges on the front end of this year because of injury. But this is a guy that, if this team matures this year, he's going to play a big part of that if this team has a chance to make the NCAA tournament, one would think.
Yeah, I thought his ability to get to the basket yesterday really mattered because he's one of your few guards who can go past people when they're up in your face. He's one of the best guys Purdue has at turning that corner off those ball screens, and he gave them life in that first half offensively when they were flatlining. And if he only scores 6 points in this game, but if he doesn't score those 4 points in the first half there, or whatever it was, does Purdue get to 10 points at halftime? I mean, they had 16, and it was him who kind of gave them the nudge forward to, actually do some positive things there at various times in the first half. But I just think so much of Purdue's potential from here on out is still tied up in him because he's the sort of guy who can just make things happen on offense at times when things, are kind of stalling. And if they can just get him up to speed, if they can, get him consistent and get him more comfortable, he's getting better on defense, I think. But if they can just get him to where, he might have been had he not missed all those games early in the season, I think that can make Purdue a much better team than they've been. He's playing well too. It's not just that he's scoring. I know he struggles on defense at times, but he's self-aware enough to understand it. He's working on it. But for him to get 6 rebounds in 16 minutes yesterday, for him to not turn the ball over 7 straight games, for a freshman who's super aggressive offensively and still inexperienced, that is remarkable to me. I mean, if you could imagine Carson Edwards his freshman year, they're wired the same way a little bit.
Yeah.
If you could imagine him his freshman year going 7 straight games without a turnover, that's just unthinkable. And I think there's parallels to be drawn there because they're similarly minded players. That just boggles my mind. 7 straight games for Jaden Ivy without a turnover. When Purdue desperately needs to take care of the basketball too. In context, that is even more impressive.
Yeah, shows a level of maturity that is not there, especially for a guy that is a scorer and wants to score. That I would agree with that very much. Tom, obviously, we're still on, at least as of this recording, which is at 2:00 Eastern on Saturday afternoon. Still waiting to hear on the defensive coordinator front. Yet it has been an active week for Jeff Brom's program. A couple transfer commitments that at least have the potential of making a difference with this program and fill, at least with bodies, fill needs on the defense. Kind of crazy. It's a crazy world out there, but this is still a much in motion situation with the DC, but also the transfer portal.
Yeah, the portal is fascinating, isn't it? What a interesting dynamic that's become such a big part of college sports at this point for football right now in the dead of winter. It's kind of fun. It's kind of exciting. Sort of like these Easter eggs pop up every once in a while. Who's going to show up at your house? And like you said, Alan, Purdue's added 3 so far this offseason, 2 this last week when shopping in the vaunted Southeastern Conference for help. course, Octavius O.C. Brothers, linebacker from Auburn, and the big defensive tackle, Anderson from South Carolina, 4-star player from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Some guys with some nice resumes coming to West Lafayette. We'll see if they can indeed help. And as we've talked about before, guys, there's a lot of areas on this team, specifically the defense, I should say, that could use help. The pass rush could get some help from Anderson. And then, of course, I still think cornerback. Got to add a cornerback if you can. They need some more depth there. They need some more ready-made players to help at that position in particular. So, yeah, that's interesting. And, of course, defensive coordinator, Brian's staying on top of it. I'm trying to kick a lot of tires, too. Boy, it's just hard to get a real read. The one guy, it seems like both of us have been able to confirm that is involved for the job is Mike Elston at Notre Dame. Defensive line coach, associate head coach, a guy I think wanted to be the DC for the Fighting Irish. Of course, we saw Marcus Freeman, the former Boilermaker, get that job in South Bend. So who knows? Maybe Elston will be disgruntled, want to move on, and if he gets a chance to call a defense, maybe he and Purdue will align. So who knows? Outside of Mike Elston, guys, there's a lot of targets out there, a lot of names, and who knows? This thing could pop at any point.
Yeah, I was going to ask you before I go to Brian that if you took all the people we've named and and bet against the rest of the field, do you take the field in this one, or is it going to? I'm being somewhat facetious, but it's who knows where this may end up and how fast this is all going to happen.
Yeah, I think you do probably take the field, to be honest with you. I guess since Elston's the one guy we have some tangible intel on, I guess you'd have to be your favorite, right? He's never called a defense before. And then that's my one worry. Not that I should get caught up on that or anybody should get caught up on that. There's no perfect resume. There's no perfect hire out of the box. Every hire is a gamble. Maybe this guy will be a genius. But again, boy, if you're the head coach, Brian Allen, coming off 3 losing years in a row, do you really want to hand the defense off to a guy who's never called it before? Yeah. Just food for thought.
Yeah, interesting prospect, and as Brian, you've written and talked about, this is an extremely important decision. Will be as it turns this as Jeff Brom tries to turn things around in the direction that he'd like with this program. Now, it's been an interesting week with Aaron Hodges' departure. Maybe in the greater picture of just trying to put a staff together, get because there's now going to be another set of missing pieces or new faces that Jeff Brom will try to assimilate and get his program moving forward. That's a challenging environment, certainly for any coach to be able to get all the pieces to work together.
Yeah, you've got to get good people in here. You got to get some stability going, but you also have to, reflect on what all's happened here, that you've had to make so many changes in the last year. If there's been some disconnect, behind the scenes, does organizational communication, organizational chemistry, does that need to be examined? Does something have to change within your structure to make sure that there's more of people being on the same page in terms of what's going on, what's expected of them, all of that stuff. That's part of any organization. That you could be running a Walmart and you would require those things, but Purdue has to get these hires right. I don't think there's any way around that. I don't want to say that this defensive coordinator hire is the most important one Jeff Brom's had to make, because last year's was the most important he had to make, and it was a complete disaster. So I think that, obviously, I'm sure that he has been self-reflective over both the hiring processes and what all has gone into, some of the things that have transpired here. And if he comes out, maybe a little bit better as a leader and an organizer from all this, that would be good for Purdue's program. But they've got to get the right people in here, and they've got to keep them around. They can't be overhauling their staff every year.
Question it. Last thing in terms of football topics, I should say. now the season's coming to an end, and the collective college football universe has at least had a season, which we weren't sure is going to happen way back when. And now Ohio State and Alabama are going to get together on Monday night and put the end of this season in what should be an interesting football game. I guess, Tom, any thought? I mentioned also your thoughts on Ohio State, Alabama, but also just the fact that this did get done, and boy, at least from a Big Ten perspective, and really if you look at mid to late June, early July, it didn't seem like any of this was ever going to come off this year. So maybe that's an accomplishment, or how do you view that? And Tom, I'll start with you, and then Brian, you can follow up.
Yeah, Brian said it way back when that victory this year will be just in playing the games, right? And while we did see many games fall to the wayside, the vast majority of these games got played for the most part, which was impressive given the circumstances, fellas. We got sort of a glimpse behind the curtain a little bit. I remember asking some players this year about the protocols, what testing was like. I guess to get some idea what they had to endure. I got a feeling as years pass, we're going to get more details as to the type of sacrifices and what went on to pull this off. From the player personnel standpoint, from the coaching staff standpoint, university standpoint. I think we've only gotten glimpses so far. So I'll be fascinated to fill in some blanks here to see, again, how big the sacrifice was and how arduous the task was to play these football games at the collegiate level. Again, I'm glad we got here for a lot of reasons. Like you said, Alan, there was a point there in July and August where it didn't look like it was going to be the case. And here we are. For better or for worse, I guess we'll see long-term ramifications if there are any health-wise for these kids. I hope not. But again, I'm happy. And now with the vaccine out, maybe guys, by the time we get to August, we'll be back to some sense of normalcy, and not just from a football standpoint, but obviously just from a life standpoint.
Yeah, Brian, what's in terms of your looking back through the perspective of the season got done? Anything to add to that fray?
Yeah, I just think it was what we kind of expected it to be. I think that it didn't go well. The Big Ten's protocols, however airtight they appeared to be early on, didn't work. Yeah. They just didn't work. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been a situation where you had to cancel the season on the fly, but this was obviously a really, really ambitious endeavor, a really uncomfortable endeavor. I mean, I'm still going to keep reminding everyone we still don't know enough about the long-term effects on young athletes of this virus, and playing during a pandemic, expose them to some risk. Now, again, we don't know what the risk would have been had they just not been playing football. I understand that. So, survival rates guy, don't reply to me on Twitter. But I just I do think, from the perspective of football being important and football being important to the people involved, getting this season out of the way getting this season played was a victory unto itself. But I do wonder how you would answer the question of whether or not it was worth it. I know the revenue is so important to these college programs, but so is the well-being of their student athletes. And this a lot came with this experience for them. This wasn't just about the virus, but it was about the absolute misery a lot of them undoubtedly existed in this past year. The daily testing, the isolation from people. That being said, life as we know it outside of football too is not what it was. So it's not like this was going to be a pleasure cruise for these guys had they not been playing football. But again, there's just really no easy answer for to the question of, whether this was worth it or not and what the actual cost of it was.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of questions in that realm are going to be pondered for years to come. And yet we also know that Purdue will be a host of the Big Ten or the NCAA tournament as it appears. And you have to hope, too, that's because there's been some cancellations in basketball that will all work its way to its end with the NCAA tournament being being focused on the state of Indiana. or in the state of Indiana in March and early April, I guess would be the date. So, and the other thing, and I've been kind of in terms of the historic perspective of this week and the difficulties and tragedies in Washington, and not to, this needs to be a site to where we talk about Purdue sports, and we will do our best to continue to do that. I do think it's worth for readers and viewers to go back and watch. I thought both Matt Painter and Tomizzo, both after last night's game, had quite a bit to say that was positive about the role of what these student athletes feel and think. Moving forward, we're all dealing with a difficult time in our country, and we all take that seriously. But I think if you haven't had a chance to go back and watch the last question of Matt Painter's press conference, and also Tomizzo, if you get the chance to watch that, I thought that they had some things to add. Not to put you guys on the spot, but anything else that you have to add on that sentiment? I mean, obviously, we're a sports website, and we want to continue to be that way. But we're also we're all Americans, and dealing with a challenging time.
I just think it was a bad day for America. I think it was one of the worst days in our history. History will remember it as one of the worst days in our history. I mean, we have to get to the bottom of this. We have extremism, being spawned in America right now, and we have to, stopping it would be nice, but we have to also understand the root causes of it. I mean, we had people storm the Capitol this week to try to, overthrow our government, basically. And 5 people died because of it. And a lot went into this. When people have been lied to for 5 years straight about a lot of different things, when their hate has been weaponized, these are vulnerable people, and they have been weaponized in a lot of ways. But we have to get to the bottom of why that happened. What put these people in position where they're sitting on the internet waiting for JFK Jr. to come back and lead the Great Awakening? I mean, this is insanity. We have people shooting up the Democratic headquarters here in Lafayette. This isn't America. This isn't what America does. And to get to the bottom of it, we have to understand why this happened, how it happened, get to the root causes of it, and just make things better for everyone. We have to understand each other better than we do. People on the coasts need to understand people in the middle better. People in the middle need to understand people on the coast better. This whole two Americas thing is turning into, a sort of Cold War that is getting really scary. And I don't know. I mean, I was shocked by what happened this week, but to be honest with you, I wasn't entirely surprised, because if you pay attention to the dark recesses of the internet sometimes, and if you pay attention to the, alternate realities a lot of people live in, stuff like this was always very possible. And, I thought the last 5 years or 4 years, more journalists were going to get killed. It's just, we've come to the brink of something really sinister, and we just have to understand why we're in this position, what brought it to this place, and how we can diffuse it. Until then, I mean, it's just kind of a very disconcerting situation we're in here as a country.
Yeah, just unbelievable. Like watching a movie, wasn't it, on a Wednesday? This couldn't really be happening in the United States of America in 2021, but here we are. Just a lot of fear. And one thing I've learned, when you have fear, you're one of two things. You're afraid you're going to lose something that you don't want to lose, or you're afraid you're not going to get something you think you deserve, typically. And there's a lot of mistrust too. And, we had a leader who certainly, emboldened a lot of people with his actions and behavior as well. There's always been extremism in America and the world. But again, boy, it seems like it's a culture that certainly felt emboldened itself to make their statement. So this is something that's not going to get cured or healed in a long time. But everything starts with one step. Every journey begins with one step, and it'll be a slow process. But I hope we can all get on the same page at some point.
Well said, both of you, and I appreciate your comments. And we look forward to that. We also look forward to a week where we'll be heading into a big game for the men's basketball team Thursday, Purdue, Indiana. And we'll look forward to Brian's work on that, in addition to trying to figure out, we may have a defensive coordinator by then, and we'll look forward to that too. So want to thank our sponsor, and that's, of course, the Purdue Union Club Hotel. And we appreciate them. And of course, anybody interested in subscribing to GoldandBlack.com, becoming a member, please go to our site. We got a 40-day free trial as well. And guys, appreciate all you do. Guys, everybody have a good week, and we'll look forward to our next weekend's conversation, which is always interesting and always cathartic in its own way. So have a great week, everybody, and thanks for watching and listening.